How do the world's top entrepreneurs scale their businesses while maintaining balance? What are the biggest leadership blind spots that hold business owners back? And how can you build a company that thrives, whether you're at the helm or not? If you're looking for real world strategies to lead with purpose, maximize your influence, and build a business that stands the test of time, this is a conversation you won't want to miss. And before we start the episode, a quick word from our sponsor, Deep Wealth and the Deep Wealth Mastery Program. Here's Sanjay, a graduate of Deep Wealth Mastery, and he says, the investment I made in the Deep Wealth Mastery Program, it's a rounding error compared to the value created today and the future value I'll receive. Or how about William, who says, and I love this, a company that's attractive to sell is also a great one to own. The Deep Wealth Mastery Program gives me the best of both worlds. Now, speaking of growth and adding value, check out what Leon says. He says that the Deep Wealth Mastery Program changed how and who we hire. We've now begun to hire talent today that we never would have hired if it weren't for the program. The talent we're hiring today is helping both increase our growth and profits and our future enterprise value. Man, I love that kind of feedback because it's that kind of feedback that's what gets me out of bed every day. Deep Wealth Mastery System, it's the only system based on a 9-figure deal. That was my deal. And as you know, I said no to a 7-figure offer, created a system that we now call Deep Wealth Mastery. And that's what helped myself and my business partners welcome from a different buyer, a different offer, a 9-figure deal. So if you're interested in growing your profits, preparing for a future liquidity event, whether that's 2 years away or 22 years away, and if you want to optimize your post-exit life, Deep Wealth Mastery is for you. Please email success@deepwealth.com. Again, that's success, SUCCESS at deepwealth.com. We'll send you all the information about Deep Wealth Mastery, otherwise known as the Scale for Ultimate Sales System. That's where you want to be. You want to be with other successful business owners, entrepreneurs, and founders just like you who are looking to create market disruptions. Whether you're a startup, whether you've been in business for 3 or 4 decades, whether you're manufacturing, whether you're high tech, SaaS, low tech, whatever the case may be, come in and network with other business owners, with other businesses just like you, because they all want to lock in their financial freedom and enjoy both success and fulfillment. Again, that's a 90-day Deep Wealth Mastery Program. It has your name on it. All you need to do is take the next step. Please send an email to success@deepwealth.com. Deep Wealth Nation, welcome to another episode of the Deep Wealth Podcast. And today we have not just any entrepreneur, I would say an entrepreneur of entrepreneurs, because as you heard in the official introduction, our guest works with incredibly successful business owners, founders, entrepreneurs to not only take where their business is today and help scale it, but if I can use that F word, to get fulfillment, to have fun, to enjoy the journey along the way. We'll be talking about that and a whole lot more. But Brian, welcome to the Deep Wealth Podcast. An absolute pleasure to have you with us. And Brian, I'm curious, there's always a story behind the story. So what's your story? What got you from where you were to where you are today?
When I think about what got me from where I was to where I am now, just really working hard, having a vision, having a passion. And you know what, Jeffrey, it's never really been about what I was doing, the business that we provided, as much as building teams, taking care of customers, taking care of our people, and then just really learning how to be an impactful leader along the way. When I say failures, it's losing good people because we didn't handle things the right way, losing a customer because we didn't handle them the way we should have, making decisions that didn't take everything into account, meaning we always erred on the side of taking care of people and taking care of customers. And sometimes really I didn't look at the financial side of things as well. And so over the years, I just learned. And every time I learned, I went to school and got my degree in business. But really where I learned how to run a business was being out there and doing it, rolling up your sleeves, taking care of people, taking care of customers, figuring things out in a way that really no one has figured it out before. And just every day waking up, being excited about building business and building teams.
From the perspective of your own business, but also the perspective now you've worked with countless entrepreneurs, we typically are the glass is half full. And sometimes we miss very glaring things in front view, front vision that can actually hurt us. What are we typically getting wrong, Brian, that you're seeing time and time again, that if we're just aware of it heading into a situation, it would really make a difference for the better? Any patterns that you're seeing, any trends?
Well, I think companies constantly need to be reinventing themselves. I think they need to be challenging themselves. The world is changing so fast. I can remember having a conversation with my dad at one point who, gosh, in teen, he won an Emmy Award for work that he had done in the Kodak research labs in the mid 70s. And he had patents that were really all under the guise of Kodak, Eastman Kodak Company, which is where he worked. But I can remember him telling me at one point, quite some time ago, that companies often aren't taking the time to get patents anymore, because by the time you actually secure the patent, the technology is really null and void, and new, better technology has evolved. And so when you take that into account and you look at what is happening in the business world, whether it is the evolution of technology and computers and digital marketing platforms and social media, and then now AI, it's just companies constantly need to be challenging themselves. So many companies today, Jeffrey, don't think that AI is going to affect them. And I would say it will affect pretty much everybody. And as a result, one of the companies that I coach that is probably the most traditional conservative type of business is actually embracing AI better than any of my other coaching clients that I work with or companies that I'm aware of. And they're getting really creative. They've got some young people on their team, very open-minded people. And so just constantly reinventing yourself and feeling an obligation to your customers, potential customers, your team, to be cutting edge and just thinking strategically and innovatively, I think is a really important step.
So you're talking about AI. Let's zoom out for just a moment because yes, AI is everywhere. It's ever facing, it's out there, it's not going anywhere. And I agree, putting our head in the sand saying AI isn't going to affect us. It's like saying I'm riding the horse and buggy, but you know what? This new thing called the automobile isn't going to make a difference. And got you there. If you take a step back, though, what's interesting and if I can give a shameless plug to our 90-day Default Mastery program, it's actually step one, big picture. And to your point, the very thing that we're talking about is, okay, what are some inflection points that are very small right now, things that could potentially put you out of business if left unchecked? Small trends, different technologies, new innovations. And I find as entrepreneurs, we are incredibly smart. And as I said before, we can be incredibly stupid in the sense that just human nature, we become successful and we get caught up in that success. Or in other words, we become complacent. That's being polite for
Mhm.
otherwise saying lazy. And we're not looking at what are the inflection points. And the classic case, and we also talk about this in Default Mastery, is Blockbuster. Blockbuster, the 800-pound gorilla, over time became complacent. They became lazy. They became irritable to their client base, and they let an upstart come in, take over the market, and eventually put them out of business. So when you're working with entrepreneurs, what are some of the tactics or strategies, Brian, that you're helping them adopt to pick up those inflection points that would otherwise be off the radar or missed?
Well, there's a very good friend of mine who would be amazing for your podcast is a guy by the name of Barrett Ursick. Barrett owns a company that's now called Hoganics, which is it's an organic fertilizer, and he's been in the fertilizing business his whole adult career and has had three businesses in that realm. I bring him into some of our executive education programs, the Entrepreneurial Masters program that I facilitate, and he guides entrepreneurs through a process called discovering your X factor. And Jeffrey, what he does is he helps people to understand that every industry has bottlenecks. And bottlenecks in your industry are not things that are just unique to your business. It's the same kind of challenges or frustrations that you and your two to three biggest competitors share. And he walks people through an iterative process that basically helps you to understand what these bottlenecks are and brainstorm these issues in a way that help you to understand that if you could just crack the code on one of those ways to address that bottleneck, you give yourself a 7 to 10 times advantage over your competitors. And it's just a different way of thinking. And so there's a 1 to 2 day workshop that people can go through, and I will use his material and walk teams through that. But then the suggestion is, and the best practice is, to spend 10% of your meeting time as a leadership team focusing on innovation, so that it's constantly in front of you. So your weekly meetings, if you have a 90-minute weekly meeting, 9 to 10 minutes of that meeting should be based on strategy and innovation every week. If you have your quarterly offsites and it's a 2-day offsite, you should be spending 1.5 to 2 hours of your offsite just on innovation. So you're constantly thinking about, so kind of what I said earlier, reinventing yourself. What can we be doing differently that our competition either isn't doing or isn't thinking? And head Blockbuster, to your point, if you walk into a meeting at Blockbuster and say, if I could reduce your rental fees by almost a factor of 90, the real estate person would have said, there's just no way. We've got such negotiating power. We have the best rental lease rates in the industry. There's really no way you can save us that kind of money, because they were thinking within their normal model. When you say, could we reduce your labor costs? You say, geez, we're already at 1.5 laborers per shift as it is. We just can't get any lower than that legally, because they weren't thinking that way. And so, but, kind of thinking about taking a Coke machine that's sitting at the end of your hall at Blockbuster and saying, well, what if we shifted everything we do in our stores to this Coke machine? That's what it takes. It takes people who are just being innovative, crazy ideas, and then just saying, well, all right, well, let's just take one of these crazy ideas and let's pretend it's going to work and bring it to life and just see what happens with it.
My goodness, Brian, with where you're going with this, forget an episode. I see an entire series here because there's a number of points that you made, and they're all spot on in terms of what's there. But one of the things that's coming out of what you're sharing, let's go to culture. And for us, step two, X factors. An X factor, one of the foundational ones, is culture. Because with what you're sharing with Blockbuster, and I know hindsight's always 2020. It's very easy to be
Right.
the backseat quarterback. I get
Yep.
that. We
Yep.
can all agree, and I'm sure Blockbuster back in the day may have agreed that the culture had just gone off base. It was all about profits first, customers second. Let's do what's best for us. And if it gets the customers upset, well, that's their problem. We've got the winning formula. Nobody can touch us. And so, with what you're sharing with innovation, oftentimes innovation gets put off to the side. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Why do we want to do that? It could shut us down in this area. We could lose our business, lose our customers. And now I'm hearing the sales team saying, hey, you're going to cut my commissions off. You want to try this new thing, and I'm going to lose the customers over here because you want to shift over there. Not doing it. So on paper, it sounds quote unquote easy. In reality, looking to implement it can be a very different experience. So, speaking of experience, what works in terms of what you've been able to do with your clients over the years, decades actually, of having a culture that adopts innovation, that's ready to try, as we like to call them here at Deep Wealth, experiments, not bet the farm, but experiments. And if it doesn't work, we can always stop it at any time, but let's dabble a little bit. Let's try and see where things are going. How do we get that within our company, within our culture, if it's not already there?
Sure. Yeah. Well, yeah, I think my belief is that leaders of any organization, whether that's a business or a not-for-profit or a family, really the leader needs to make sure that the people they're leading can answer three questions. And that is, where are we going? What do we need to do to get there? And what is my role? Where are we going is that very clearly articulated vision of what success looks like 3, 5 years from now. And when I say clearly articulated, it's very detailed. I just did this for a very large company over the weekend and this morning, and I took all their feedback and information, and I created a story out of it that clearly articulates their vision. But what it does is it gets everyone in the organization aligned behind what success looks like. And it's so detailed that it's literally like looking at a picture, and you can see, or a movie of what the company's going to look like in 3 years. And then from there, the greater team comes together and says, okay, if that's where we're going to be, what do we need to do to get there? And then the broader team comes together and figures that out. And when you have input from everyone, and the people on your team feel like they are heard, they are valued, and they are able to contribute to the strategy that is needed to execute to the vision, then you get buy-in. commitment, you get buy-in, and then you're able to create a culture of accountability, which is that last part. And that is, what is my role? So where are we going? What do we need to do to get there? And what is my role? So everyone in the organization, from the founder or the CEO to the person that was just hired on the front line yesterday, understands exactly what their role is in executing on that strategy to reach that vision. And once you do that and the people understand what they've raised their hand to commit to, it makes it much easier to create that culture of accountability. And so having alignment around where you're going and what it's going to take to get there and what your role is, to me, that's a very fundamental recipe for success.
Interesting. And speaking of success, and I know I've taken us down this rabbit hole. We're going in very different directions. We started with AI, we ended up at inflection points, and now we're talking culture. But let me flip the question now, because Brian, again, what you're doing with your company is incredible. Of how it's not just business. And you and I, we've had a number of offline conversations. And each time I speak with you, I walk away even more impressed. You really get it. You get, if I can use a fancy word, the gestalt of things, because it's not just about reaching this milestone. Are you fulfilled along the way? Dare I use the word happy? Are you feeling both happiness and fulfillment along the way? What's your overall life like? What's your rhythm like? What's going on the personal side? Because you're really one of the few in my circles, people I speak with, that recognize it can't just be about the business. If the personal side is broken, if it's not working, it's going to spill over onto the business side, and we're a complete package. So when you have your clients in the right place, they're creating market disruptions, they're checking off the boxes on reaching those goals. Again, it's the 80-20 principle, the 80-20 law. Is it 20% of the same actions that are creating 80% of the results for these companies that are winning? And if it is, what are some of those 20% that are really moving the dial?
I think these coaching platforms that exist in the world have gotten somewhat mainstream, at least in the entrepreneurial world. I think the people who are the most successful are those that are able to create balance in their life. I've built two very traditional businesses and exited those. And I spend my life now working with people to help develop leaders in all dimensions of their lives. So in business, in their relationships, and also in their involvement in the community. And what I find is that people who take the time to invest in their family, in their business, in the community, and in themselves is really the right balance to start to create a sense of purpose, maybe a sense of happiness. And so, what I do when I work with leadership teams, what I really find the most value in is when they allow me to step in and say, great, we've got your company on track. You know where you're going. You know what you need to do to get there. Everyone understands their role. Let's start to look at you as an individual and how you show up in your world. And so we start to focus on what are the 3 or 4 priorities in your family life. What do you want your family life to be 3, 5 years from now? And what are you willing to do to get there? And then in addition to that, we approach family, business, your involvement in the community and yourself all very much the same way. Where are we going? What do I need to do to get there? And what is required of me to do that? What is my role in executing on that? And when you're able to sit and identify really 2 or 3, 4 at the most priorities in each of those areas and start to create a strategic plan for your life in its entirety, it's transformational for people.
Wow. So as you're talking about that again, you're making it sound so effortless. And I know, and that it's not like we just wake up one day, as nice as it would be, it's not like we wake up one day and boom, it just happens. Everything falls into place. There's thought, there's planning, there's deliberate actions of what to do, but also what not to do. So walk us through some of your, if you will, your secret sauce of what you're doing. So I'm showing up today. Okay, Brian, here we are, the good, the bad, the not so good. Work with us, help get me as the owner of this company to a better place. What should I expect in terms of timing? How long is this going to take? What am I going to be doing? And I know every company's different and the journey is going to be different depending on where I am and where things are at. But generally speaking, what does that look like when I start with your leadership mastery?
So in the first 90 days, there will be a sense of focus and structure that not only the visionary leader, but the team, the leadership team will feel like they are aligned around, and they feel like maybe for the first time ever, they're all rowing in the same direction. And then from there, what we'll find is a consistent pattern of a culture of accountability where it's really more peer pressure that there's the culture of accountability comes from peer pressure. My approach is this: if you and I are on a team, Jeffrey, you're going to commit to what you need to do to create success in your area of responsibility. You will then define where you need to be 90 days from now in order to be on track to reach your annual goals or your 3-year goals. And then you'll create sub accountabilities or milestones. So, what are you going to do next week or 2 weeks or a month from now on track to meet your quarterly goals and your annual goals? Those are all yours. You decide what those are. And then you commit to the time frames. And when we come into our weekly accountability meeting, those are your goals. They weren't imposed on you. You set those goals, you made those commitments, you made those agreements that you would do those things. When you come into a meeting, every single person that comes in knows that if they didn't achieve something that they said they would, they're going to get asked the same 4 questions. And that is, what happened? So I ask you, Jeffrey, you committed to get this done. Is that done? You would say, no, it's not. The question is, what happened? And we wait. We wait for an answer. It could take 5 seconds. It could take 5 minutes, but we wait for an answer so that you can tell the team what happened that made you not achieve that goal. The second question is, what is a future date that you can absolutely commit to achieve that goal? The third question, is there any other collateral impact of you not doing what you said you were going to do on your future goals, other things that you're working on, or things that other people are working on? And then the last question is all about team. What can this team do, Jeffrey, to help you achieve this goal? It's the same 4 questions. No one feels singled out. If you come to a meeting and you haven't hit your goal or haven't done what you said you were going to do, those are the questions you're going to get. Very rarely does someone walk into a meeting a second time having not done what they said they were going to do. But it's not someone cracking the whip, it's self-imposed. If you've got a good team based on trust, you have a team that has good, healthy input and conflict, then it's a lot easier to commit to what you're working towards. So there's that. So what happens is, first 90 days, you feel like you're very focused, you're very aligned. And then within a year, you start to see consistent results time and time again. And maybe for the first time, a team starts to believe, hey, yes, we've got some aggressive goals, but I actually think we can accomplish these because we've got a pattern of behavior as a leadership team of excellence and delivering on results. So there's a big component of that.
As you're going through that, you're covering a number of different areas, but what's behind the scenes, which in my books has you very unique, Brian? It's not just about the business. And yes, you're talking about the business, the strategy. You have your purpose filled life program, you have that as well. You're also doing 2 other things because it's really the whole package. One of the things is you're talking about overall health, which is near and dear here to us at Deep Wealth because health is our first wealth. And I know you have a whole life and wellness program. Then at the same time, you're also big on couples retreats. And what's interesting about that, in my experience as an entrepreneur, and I've made this mistake myself, I've just been so focused on the business, getting to the goal. At my own expense, I've often left out my significant other, my family. So they don't know why I'm going through what I'm going through, what's ahead, all those other things that are going on there. Can you talk to us about both the health aspect and I'll call it bigger picture wise, the family slash significant other aspect of why that's so central to what you're doing and why that's important?
You mentioned about being a whole series versus a single episode. That is one that we could probably spend years on. It's really interesting. So let me touch on really quickly the health and wellness side. And that is, we as leaders, we as entrepreneurs, so often we're the driving force behind our companies. And so investing in ourselves is such an important part. So, when I talked earlier about family, business, community, and self, they're all important. And when we invest in ourselves, whether it is mental health, physical health, wellness, learning, growing. Often we feel guilty when we go off and invest in ourselves or go out and go to a spa treatment or a 2 or 3 day retreat or a learning program where we're learning and we're pulling ourselves away from our business and our family. But the reality is, in every relationship we have in life, whether it's a family relationship, a marital relationship, or a business relationship or friendship, we first show up as an individual. And so when we show up as an individual, when we need to be the best version of ourselves when we do that, and that takes investing. We need to invest in ourselves. So eating healthy, staying fit, keep learning and growing and constantly striving to be better, to learn more, to be more self-aware, to be more at peace with where we are in our life. We then come back and we show up better in our business, in our family, in our romantic relationships, and in our friendships. Moving on to the relationship side is, my wife is a certified Gottman relationship leader. And so she often is designing a lot of the curriculum that we will guide couples through on our couples retreats that we do. And our couples retreats are anywhere from a 3 day weekend to a week-long one at a dude ranch, or we had one in Tuscany a couple months ago. We're doing one in Greece and Tuscany this coming year. They're very immersive experiences. You have a ton of fun, but you also kind of work as a couple on important parts of your relationship. My wife started to teach me these concepts of what the Gottmans teach about building an important relationship and how to have a really successful marriage or relationship. And there came a point where she said every relationship actually needs to have conflict in order to be the best it can be. And she said safely navigating conflict leads to intimacy. And I said, you lost me there. I don't know that I buy that. She said, well, let's talk about it for a minute. She said, I don't necessarily mean sexual intimacy, but I mean intimacy. And she said, when you and I are having an argument or a disagreement, what is it that you want from me? And we had a lengthy conversation. Finally, I kind of landed on, well, I want you to understand me. I don't feel like you're understanding what I'm trying to say, or I don't feel like you understand me. And she said, okay. And what do you think it is that I want? And it was a much shorter conversation. I said, well, you probably want me to understand you. And she said, exactly. So if we can figure out how to safely navigate conflict, on the other side of that is you have a better understanding of me and I have a better understanding of you. And one of the definitions of intimacy is into me you see. And she said, so if we better understand each other, our relationship is taking a significant step forward. And she said, so really strong relationships actually need conflict. And she goes, one of the red flags that I see is when a couple says, we don't argue, we never argue. She said, because you actually really need that. And what it told me, Jeffrey, was this. I realized in that moment that a marriage or a romantic relationship is a team. It's a team of two. And when I look at what I've done with my own companies, but now I do with other companies, is it's the same things of building a high performing team. And high performing teams are really based in trust. And then from there, healthy conflict. Once you have trust in your leadership team and you all feel like you're aligned and you're supporting each other, all going in the same direction, that allows you to really nurture and foster healthy conflict. And healthy conflict is really needed in order to be the best team that you can be. And what it does, healthy conflict does, is it makes everyone feel like they've contributed to the decisions that are being made. It doesn't mean that they're made by democracy. It doesn't mean that you lead with consensus. It just means you lead with collaboration. And part of collaboration is really good, healthy conflict. And when you foster an environment of healthy conflict where everyone feels like they've got a voice and their piece has been heard, once you come to a decision, it's so much easier for people to then commit to that decision going forward. And then from there, you have accountability and then you get results. But it's the same thing in a marriage. It's having that fundamental trust, having that commitment to each other, and being able to safely navigate conflict then allows you to have an opportunity to communicate and be heard and be sensitive to each other. So, anyways, I kind of went off, but that's where it's really fascinating because when my wife and I will deliver these couples retreats, she kind of delivers the research and the science behind things. And I always kind of joke and say, okay, I'm going to translate this into entrepreneurship now or leadership because they're so aligned.
Yeah, wow, there's a lot going on there. But let me ask you this, Brian. What you're saying intuitively, it makes a lot of sense. And I would imagine that as a leader, as an entrepreneur, when I get it right on the personal front with the family, with the significant other, that we're, in your words, intimate, but in a different way with one another, that those skills are also transferable to my team, that my team, they want to be heard. They want to be recognized. They want to see that and hear that from me as the big chief, as the visionary, as one of the founders of the company, that it's really creating a cascading win all the way around. Thoughts about that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So when I say I joke, I'm going to translate this into entrepreneurship or business leader speak is when people can understand that the way you invest in relationships is really the same, whether it's in your personal life or in your business life.
Hmm.
It's because human beings are human beings. They show up and they work in our businesses, but they leave our businesses and they go home and they have, and you don't necessarily treat one set of relationships fundamentally different than another. No, I'm not saying you have to have your business like your family, but what I'm saying is the studies that are done about what makes people feel satisfied in their work is usually compensation is on a good day, number four, usually number five or even six in terms of how it ranks. And the top one or two or three for sure is feeling valued, feeling like you contribute, that what you do matters to the organization. And relationships are the same way. For my wife, her love language is quality time. And so for me, being centered and focused on her is a really important way that she feels loved. And so for me, being present with her, meaning my phone is not a distraction. I'm not looking at what's going on around the room. I'm not thinking about all the other 100 things going on in my life. But for that moment in time, she's the center of my universe, is the way she feels loved. And it's the way I can tell her I love her. But that translates to anybody. Any human being needs to feel valued. And when you are present with someone else, you're telling them they matter. And when you're the leader of a company or the leader of a team, the people that you're leading, they crave that from you on some level. They need to feel valued and they need to feel heard. And so investing in your people is, I think, essential in being a strong leader. If you look back, one of my favorite books is called Discover Your True North by Bill George, who was the CEO of Medtronic. Now he teaches leadership at Harvard. Wonderful guy. And in his book, Discover Your True North, in the first chapter or so, he talks about the era of Jack Welch and GE, where, the smartest person in the room evolved into being leaders. He said that era has kind of shifted. It's now people with the higher emotional intelligence, the people who genuinely care about the people they're leading and are good at building teams. Those are the people that are evolving into leadership today. And so it's really, if you think about it, to kind of bring your question full circle, those are the same things that you need to really invest in your children or your nieces and nephews or your brothers or sisters or parents, and certainly your romantic relationships, that you are present, you are sensitive, you genuinely care, and you're doing what it takes to invest in that team. And so, yeah, if you can figure that out on the home front and you're able to take those skills into your business, I think back to your question earlier on, I think you'll find more success. I think you'll find that you are happier in all aspects of your life and that you're not necessarily needing to make a trade-off between family success and business success, because there's a quote that says, no failure in the home can justify success in business.
Yeah, my goodness, Brian, so much to unpack there. What you said, though, quick story, actually, is actually just a few days back. I was driving with my daughter and topic came up. She's in high school in her last year, and the topic came up of Machiavelli. And we're talking about what Machiavelli was saying about fear and love. And it's easy to really misconstrue it. But he was saying if you can, you want to be both feared and loved. One without the other is not as good as both. But he went on to say that, well, if you can't be loved, it's better to be feared. If you can only have one, pick fearing. And my sense is, Brian, you can tell me, Jeffrey, on base or off base, that's really been misinterpreted. And look, in the workplace, as someone's boss, can I get them to fear me? Sure. They're fearful of losing their job. As a parent, can I have a child fear me? Okay, sure. I'm the parent and there could be some consequences. But if we look at the overall bigger picture, and believe me, there is a method to this madness. I'll tie this all together in just a moment here. When I've mastered the ability to what you're talking about, of having people genuinely feel heard, respected, and trusted. And when I say the word love, that they love me, not in a romantic sense in the workplace, but they love me in terms of they revere me as a leader. They have a lot of respect. Who are we going to get more from in the really challenging situations? Someone who hates someone as a leader or someone who loves someone as a leader? Hey, I can't let so and so down. I'm going to go to the moon and back. They really put their trust in me. I don't want to let them down. I'm going to find a way to make this happen. Versus that blankety blank, and you feeling what the blankety blank is, let it go where it's going to go. So be it. They deserve it. And it's so often, I feel, and again, you can say Jeffrey, on base, off base, missed in the workplace because it's very easy to rely on the fear. And Brian, by the way, I'm not perfect. I've failed very much so in this area. I've leaned in the past too much on fear and still learning about that and making course corrections as it goes along. But looking at it with what you're talking about, this soft skill, this life skill, which is so important, both on the home front and in the business, it can make all the difference from being just good to being great. Thoughts about that?
Yeah, wow. I have always believed or experienced that when I felt the most successful was when I was involved in, and I knew the people that worked for me. I cared about them. I knew what was going on in their life. I knew their families. I mean, again, as the bigger you get, the harder it is to do that. But people knew that we were a fast growing business and there was a lot going on. But when they felt like I took the time to get to know them as an individual, totally separate from what they were doing for us in our business, they would run through a brick wall. I mean, it's just something about feeling like you're part of a team, something that feels you're valued. Because, Jeffrey, we don't know what's going on in the rest of their life. And all we can really do is make them feel loved, cared for, appreciated, valued, and part of a team. That is so important to people. And it has to be genuine. It can't be for the sake of money. It can't be for the sake of just achieving goals or building success. It has to be genuine. And I think what's really important is to understand that every human being shows up in each moment of every day, a product of all the experiences they've had in their life. And when you think about your life, Jeffrey, there's been some things that you either have or would love to share on social media, and you'd love to share on a podcast or out with the world. And then there's things you've gone through that, wow, you don't even really want to think of because they were really hard. They were really hard. They were scary. They were devastating and sad. And just, you don't want to go back there even. But they
Yeah.
happened. They
Yeah.
happened and they make up who you are. And so recognizing every human being is just showing up in every moment, doing the best they can given the circumstances they find themselves in, which is the immediate moment as well as their life 20 years ago. To me, that's just a great way to go through life and just see the humanity in everyone that we work with. Now, that doesn't mean that we have to accept bad performance. It just means when we have those difficult conversations that we lean in with curiosity first. In other words, hey, Jeffrey, we have this problem that I need to talk about with you because we need to fix it. You're not delivering on what you committed to do, and we need to figure that out. But Jeffrey, I know that's not like you. And I'm just curious. I imagine there's something maybe going on in your life that's making it a little bit difficult for you. And I want to support you in any way I can as we fix this issue. And maybe that's giving you support. Maybe that's getting some of our teammates to step in and help out during a difficult time, whatever it is. But when people feel like you have recognized the humanity that they are going through, the struggle that they may be going through, and that it's okay to be going through that, then I think one, people work harder and are more committed to getting something done, or will accept the help in the moment. And when they have an opportunity to step up and help a coworker or help the team, they naturally are more willing to do that.
Absolutely. And as you're talking about that, when we can be respectful, understanding, supportive, cooperative, it creates gratefulness. And we have to do that without expecting anything in return. It's just part of who we are and what we're doing. But let me ask you this, and it may be somewhat of an unfair question. I'm going to put you on the spot for just a moment. You're very modest. You've had an incredible career as an entrepreneur. Pure wellness rooms you had started, and a number of years later, you had a successful exit. You've been very involved with Entrepreneurs Organization, otherwise known as EO, if memory serves. You're the global board of directors and all these other fancy titles that go along with that. When you look back at that, leading in EO, all these other entrepreneurs, it's like herding cats, or your own business, Pure Wellness. Were there any one or two strategies, maybe even three, or maybe just one that really stands out for you as you and I were talking of what can really move the dial in the business? Is there a particular strategy that jumps out for you that made all the difference for you when in the
Yeah.
trenches, Pure Wellness, EO, or anything else in between?
Yeah. So, great question. Many entrepreneurs lead in their businesses with what's called positional authority. When you own a business, you sign the check, so to speak, if anyone signs checks anymore, but you have a title, you own the business. And so you can lead with directives, you can lead with telling people what to do, and they choose to do it or not. If they choose not to, maybe they end up finding themselves in another job, but you have positional authority. When you lead in the entrepreneurs organization, you are leading other successful entrepreneurs, successful leaders. And these people are volunteering their time. And so you do not have positional authority in the entrepreneurs organization in EO. And so you actually have to learn how to shift to leading with relational authority, which means you're leading through collaboration or you're leading through influence. And the beautiful thing is, leading with positional authority, the way many people lead in their businesses, doesn't transfer well into leading in EO. However, if you can learn how to lead leaders, that transfers back to how you lead in your business. And any organization, Jeffrey, has a bottleneck. And usually the width of that bottleneck is determined by the number of people who have the ability to make decisions of substance. And so very often in businesses led with positional authority, that bottleneck is very narrow because it's the founder, it's the owner, it's the leader, or very few leaders. And so if you can learn how to lead other leaders and see leadership abilities and nurture and mentor and develop them, you start to create more leaders. And if you can transfer that back to your business and see leadership abilities in the people on your team and help develop and nurture them and empower them to start to step up and make decisions of substance, that bottleneck widens. And when that bottleneck widens and you create more leaders in your organization, that's how organizations really scale. And that's really where you create impact and value.
Interesting. And taking the big picture of what you're sharing, and again, you can share Jeffrey on base or off base. What I'm really hearing you say is, hey, it's easy to lead by title. I'm your boss. I'm the founder. I'm the CEO. I'm the president. Fill in the blank. You're going to do this because I'm telling you to do this. Versus you're leading not only by example, you have people's respect, you have their admiration, you have, and I use air quotes, their business love that's been earned along the way where they want to help. And it's not to say that you're a pushover, because if things aren't being met, you have transparency, you have accountability, you have those difficult conversations. I'll use another F word, but you're fair along the way. How am I doing with that?
Yeah, it kind of ties back to your discussion with your daughter about Machiavelli. And that is, so you could either choose love or fear. And Machiavelli said, if you have to choose or you have to make a choice, choose fear. I would look at it this way. If I was to agree with that statement, I would look at it this way: the fear of loss. In other words, if I am in an environment where I'm constantly told what to do and I'm simply doing what I'm told or doing what other people are instructing me to do, that's a job. And I'm just simply a pawn doing a task, doing what I'm told to do. when I feel like I'm part of a team and I feel like I'm valued and I'm respected for my abilities and I'm being nurtured and I'm mentored and I'm growing, the fear of losing that, I think, is a powerful motivator because, and again, not that I would want someone to fear me, but my spiritual life is important to me. And so I always struggled with the notion of being God fearing. And for me, I believe that to be more a matter of the notion of fear there is not the same kind of fear you might have of a predator, but fear of the respect and the power that a being has. And so when I look at where I would feel good about someone fearing would be that they found so much value in being part of our team and contributing to what we were doing that their fear was based in, I just want to make sure I'm always part of this team. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does make sense. And at the risk of going down another rabbit hole, and I'm sure some of the questions that I've been asking, I've lost all the listeners, maybe just one listener. And this next question, I may lose that other listener. So it's just you and I talking now at this point, Brian. You mentioned spirituality. And I have to share with you that on the podcast, it's really a privilege for me to speak to so many successful entrepreneurs, business founders, thought leaders, whatever they're doing in whatever area they're in. There's a lot of them, though, that share with me, Jeffrey, I am the person that I am today because of my spirituality. Some people call it God, some people call it the universe, whatever you'd like to call it. You were alluding to spirituality for yourself as well. How does that play a role for you as you look over your career and when you're working with clients? And a lot of times that can be a no-fly zone, but it perhaps is there in the background. So where are you on that? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so I personally believe, and I also share this when I'm in helping to form leaders. I use form leaders versus teaching leadership very specifically. And because I believe that leadership is already within someone, and I'm trying to create and curate an environment for them to find the answers that are already in themselves. That said, one of the things that I talk about is that for me is important is having an element of kind of guiding principles in your life, like a North Star of sorts. And that could be, and spirituality, that's kind of a broader definition of that is spirituality. And what I say to them is that could be structured religion, that could be nature, that could be meditation, that could be yoga, that is something unique to each individual. The reason I say is, listen, there's going to be times when we really are in a position where we're making tough decisions or we find ourselves in a challenging situation. And having something that you can turn to feel grounded and feel like you're making the right decisions that you can feel good about, those are important things to have. And so when I talk about spirituality, I have my own definition of that, but I don't impose my beliefs on someone else. But what I do encourage is for people to have something that they look to that gives them that direction, that North Star. That's been very essential in how I've been able to get through really just about anything, the amazing things as well as the really challenging things.
Yes, it's really something bigger than yourself, something ever present, if you will. And the peace of mind, the confidence that comes with that. Hey, I'm not alone in this. And there is a North Star, and it's a good North Star, a terrific moral compass that comes along with that. It's interesting because I see that when people, if they're open to talking about that, that does tend to come up in the conversations. And it's really interesting to hear I am the leader I am today because of that, because of the spirituality, because I allow that in my life. And I'm not forcing it or pushing it upon people, but I'm not going to hide it either because this is a part of who I am. And it's interesting with yourself, Brian, to hear that as well. My goodness, Brian, you know what? There are so many questions that I have not asked that I really do want to ask. But as we head into wrap up mode, we're not quite there yet. Is there one question I didn't ask that you'd like to put out there, or a particular topic that we haven't yet covered, or even a message or a theme that you want to share with the Deep Wealth Nation? Perhaps something that you're doing at the Legacy of Significance with all the programs, or what you're seeing, or what's ahead. Would love your thoughts on that.
Oh boy, I don't know, but what came to my mind and what came to my heart as you were asking that is just that there's so many successful people out there. And they're successful in a sense that by society standards about dollar bills or bank account balances. And yet, what I have found in my journey, especially over the past 5 years or so, is that people are looking for something maybe more meaningful, that they don't necessarily want to start just to build another business. They don't necessarily want to simply get another promotion or make their business bigger. They're okay with doing those things, but they find themselves at a point in their life where they've achieved some level of financial success or business success, and it is not quite as fulfilling as they thought it would be. And they're looking for their life to mean something more. They're looking to be able to use their skills, use their experience to make a bigger impact in the world. And that's going to be different for everyone. I'm all about living a life of significance. That doesn't mean that you need to cure cancer or get a Nobel Peace Prize or hop on a plane and fly halfway across the world to build a hospital or a school or a children's home, although those are all very admirable things. It could be just building a life where you are very present in the life of your children and that you raise children who are healthy and contributing to a better world. I mean, anyone who's ever accomplished anything wonderful in the world is someone's daughter or son. And so just there's so many different ways that we can contribute, and no one way is better than another. I think it's a matter of being very purposeful about who we want to be and what we want to be with our lives, and then just being purposeful about getting there. I mean, Jeffrey, as long as we are breathing and alive, life is going to happen. And either it can happen by accident or we can be purposeful about increasing the likelihood that we live the way we want to live. I had someone tell me once that we as human beings, we cannot define our own legacy. We can choose our behaviors and how we show up in the world. And at some point in the future, the world will define our legacy for us. And so that's really what it's about, is just kind of deciding, how do I want to be remembered? And how do I need to show up? And how do I need to live my life in order to maximize the likelihood that people will define my legacy in a way that I feel great about?
And what's interesting, Brian, as you're sharing that, and in my mind now, I'm reflecting on what you're doing and how you're doing that. I'll put myself under the microscope for just a moment. I don't think my entrepreneurial journey is really different from many others. I never had the time to think about, okay, life after the business. It didn't even occur to me. I was so busy doing what I was doing. And at the time, it felt right. Although looking back, I know it's all wrong. And things like legacy or, hey, Jeffrey, there will come a point in time where you can buy any shiny new object and it'll have you feel happy and smile for maybe a day or two, maybe four if you're doing really well. But there'll come a point where it's just not going to be enough. And that fulfillment has to come from within. I never had that training, if you will, or that education or the ability to grow that muscle until I was in the thick of things. And we all know it's already too late at that point, and you're putting yourself in a perfect situation, a perfect storm for some not great results with that. And what I really admire and respect with what you're doing, Brian, really elegantly is you're combining business, legacy, health, personal all together, but you're doing it now. I don't have to imagine 50 years from now or even 30 years from now. I can begin to do that today and it's within reach. And I'm surrounding myself with yourself and others that can help me along the way. And it's really, I'll use this word deliberately, a lifeline that we don't see a lot out there, but it's there to make entrepreneurs, better leaders, better family members, standing in the community, whatever it's going to be, it's there for them through what you're doing. And for that, really a tremendous amount of respect with what you're doing and admiration for that. And I'll put this over to you before we go into wrap up mode. If there's anything you want to add to that or something to I may have missed in what I didn't say or did say with that.
Yeah, I guess just what feeds my soul and why I jump out of bed every morning is really having a positive impact in the lives of others. And so helping to curate experiences where people can show up the best version of themselves and be leaders in all dimensions of their life is really what I love to do. And if there's anything, any of our programs that people feel they can connect with, whether it's building their business or finding purpose or investing in their relationship, that's what we love to do. And the more people that we can help in those areas just makes me happy.
Well, it's something that is terrific to get out of bed for and to change people's lives and to make a difference with that. And it's wonderful. And thank you for paying it forward in your own unique and very special way. That's truly making a difference. And speaking of making a difference, this will be interesting. I'm going to look forward to this. We're in officially the wrap up mode here. And it's a tradition on the Deep Wealth podcast where I have both the privilege and the honor for every guest. I ask the same question. And it's a really fun question, Brian. Let me set this up for you. When you think of the movie Back to the Future, you have that magical DeLorean car that can take you to any point in time. So, Brian, imagine now it's tomorrow morning. This is the fun part. You look outside your window. Not only is the DeLorean car curbside, the door is open, waiting for you to hop on in, which you do. And you're now going to go to any point in your life. Brian, as a young child, as a teenager, whatever point in time it would be, what are you telling your younger self in terms of life lessons or life wisdom? Or, hey, Brian, do this, but don't do that. What would that sound like?
Well, I would probably go back to when I was 25 years old. I had attended a Tony Robbins seminar and we were breaking boards. And at the time, I set this goal. I wanted to be a millionaire and I wanted to have a private jet. And at 25, that was important to me. And at 60, it's not important at all. And I think I needed some of that energy as a 25-year-old and that drive and passion. But what I would have said then, I would have said, hey, listen, enjoy those things, but understand that they can come and go. The relationships in your life are going to be the most important things. And just enjoy what you have, save money, live within your means, but where you want to spend your energy and your focus and money is on developing a great life for you and your family and your friends. Probably what I would have said off the top of my head, anyways.
Wow, really love that. And as you're sharing that, I don't want to oversimplify it. And again, you can share Jeffrey on base or off base. When enjoying the time with your family, your loved one, your friends, it's also enjoying the journey. And to what you're speaking about earlier, having those people as a part of the journey, not excluded from the journey. And it's interesting. I've shared this from time to time on the podcast for myself when I'm with family members. We're at what would be considered, Brian, just a plain old family get together, just another meal, another dinner, another family dinner. I'll deliberately share with people, hey, right here, right now, this is the good old days, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. If you were to take a picture and we were to fast forward, so unlike the question I just asked you of going back in time, we're moving forward in time, and I showed you this picture, chances are, sadly, you'd be saying, oh, wow, I really miss so and so because they're no longer with us. Or look at me, look how young I am there and so much ahead for me. But oftentimes, the human condition, we don't appreciate that. And we just let it go by as another,
Yeah.
let me check the box, another to do list thing I've done. I've met my obligation. I saw the family for the week, the month, the quarter, whatever it is, as opposed to what you're saying. It's really terrific advice. I shouldn't do this, but I am going to do this. Ask a quick follow up question. Your experience, what's the best way to really make sure that we do enjoy the family, the friends, the loved ones without letting life get the best of us or the days or the weeks or months get ahead of us?
Yeah, so I have two things. One is I have a list of 100 lifetime experiences I want to have in my life. And every
Hmm.
year about this time, I look and say, what are the things that I need to prioritize this coming year for whatever reason? Either
Hmm.
I'm getting older and these are going to be harder to accomplish, and so none of them are about accumulating money. In fact,
Hmm.
I mean, they require money to do some of these things, but the only thing that relates to money is giving it away. I track how much money I give away, but they're all about experiencing life. And there was a point in time, my dad is going to be 88 in this coming year. And it was about 4 years ago
Hmm.
now that I was sitting and looking at my list. And one of my lists was to spend a week one-on-one with my dad. No one
Hmm.
else, not his wife, not my family, just my dad and I one-on-one. And I looked at it and thought, I don't want to have a regret that I pushed this one off too long. So I just made it a priority. And 3 months later, we
Mhm.
were up in Steamboat Springs for a week together, just he and I one on one. So it's a matter of looking and saying, being purposeful, because in our businesses, we have our priorities that we focus on and we make sure those things get done. And then we open up and start answering emails and phone calls, and it starts to fill our day. Well, the same thing in life. If we don't prioritize the important relationships in our life, things are going to fill up our day. And in our business life, Jeffrey, we have squeaky wheels. We have
Mhm.
customers, we have vendors, we have associates that we work with that very often are the squeaky wheels in our life. But it's our children, our marriages, our family that often are the more important voices in our life, but they're often quieter. And so, really being conscientious of saying, I really need to focus on the quiet voices in my life, not just the squeaky wheels, is important. And so the other thing that I do is I have something called Papa Days. My grandchildren call me Papa. And
Mhm.
so I have these things called Papa Days, where once a year I dedicate a day just to them. So I have grandchildren, I have children and their spouses. And so with my children and their spouses and my grandchildren, I take a day and it's just one on one with them. They decide where we go to breakfast, when we go to breakfast, what we do between breakfast and lunch, where we go to lunch, what we do between lunch and dinner, and then where we go to dinner. And then once dinner's done, the day's done. But it's a day that is 100% focused on them, and they decide what we do. So it is a day where it's just me and that person. And the only time I bring out my phone is to take pictures or videos. And then at the end of the day, I make a video, I upload it to YouTube so that it's memorialized. It's just a day. And certainly my grandchildren will never let me stop doing that. And I think I get more out of it than they do. But every time I see them, they're thinking about ideas for their next Papa Day. And I've never really had a budget until my son's middle child, his son, last year, after the day after his Papa Day, he decided, he said, Papa, he said, next year for my Papa Day, I want to go in a hot air balloon and ride around all day in a limousine. And I thought, well,
My
well,
goodness.
I may need to impose a budget on these things before they get carried away, but they're incredible days, and they're memories, and investing in their things that I will remember for the rest of my life, but I know they will as well. And they'll know that every year they were able to spend a day where it was just me and them, and they were the center of my world, and that they meant a lot to me. And I hope that when they're 50 years old, they remember those moments with admiration and love.
Brian, that is absolute, not gold, but platinum in terms of what you're doing for your legacy. And those are really, I'm going to say, character building moments, not so much for you, but it is in this case for your grandchildren and how they're going to raise their children and how they're going to talk about you with these Papa Days. And the other takeaway I'm hearing from you, we can't leave it to chance. Just like in business, we don't leave things to chance. We can't leave it to chance. So, for starters, we can't ignore the most important people in our life. And it's always struck me as so ironic. We will treat a stranger from the street in a polite, kind voice. However, our loved ones, our significant other, perhaps at the wrong time, is not that nice, kind voice that they're hearing from us. It's something else and it's not good. And then to
Right.
your point of blocking it out, putting it in the calendar. I'm not just going to somehow imagine it's going to happen. No, this is going to happen. God willing, it's going to happen at this date and this time until further notice. And you're
Yeah.
really blocking out that time to make it happen, which is wonderful life advice. And so, Brian, coming out of here, my goodness, there are just so many more questions. We're going to have you back and continue the conversation. In the interim, though, for that one listener that might be listening that didn't drop off from all these crazy questions I was asking and these different rabbit holes that we were going down, a listener does have a question. Someone in Deep Wealth Nation, yes, Brian, come into the company, help us or help me as a leader get that fulfillment and really from my whole business, personal, my legacy, all those other things, put that all together in a cohesive way. Where is the best place online for someone to find you?
Well, our website is at legacyofsignificance.com, or they can reach me personally at Brian, which is Brian, at life-bydesign.com. And I answer every email I ever get.
In Default Nation, it does not get any better. Go to the show notes. It's a point and click. Brian is sharing his email address. Take him up on that. Reach out, ask some questions, have a conversation. I guarantee you, you'll be a whole lot happier and better coming out of that than when you went into that. Well, Brian, on that note, congratulations. It's official. This is a wrap. And as we love to say here at Deep Wealth, may you continue to thrive and prosper while you remain healthy and safe. Thank you so much.
Jeffrey, you're awesome. Thanks for having me. This has been very deep and really I had a lot of fun.
So there you have it, Deep Wealth Nation. What did you think? So with all that said, and as we wrap it up, I have another question for you. Actually, it's more of a personal favor. Did you find this episode helpful? Have you found other episodes of the Deep Wealth Podcast empowering and a game changer for your journey? And if you said yes, and I really hope you did, I have a small but really meaningful way that you can actually help us out and keep these episodes coming to you. Are you ready for it? The dramatic pause. I'll just wait a moment. Drum roll, please. Subscribe. Please subscribe to the Deep Wealth Podcast on your favorite podcast channel. When you subscribe to the Deep Wealth Podcast, you're saving yourself time. Every episode automatically comes to you. And I want you to know that we meticulously craft every one of our episodes to have impactful strategies, stories, expert insights that are designed to help you grow your profits, increase the value of your business, and yes, even optimize your post-exit life and your life right now, whatever you want that to look like. And every time you subscribe and a fellow entrepreneur subscribe, it's a testament to how together, yes, we are changing the social fabric of society. One business owner at a time, one liquidity event at a time. So don't let the momentum stop here. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast channel. You'll never miss an episode. You'll be the first to hear from the top industry leaders, the innovators, the disruptors that are really changing and shaping the business world. And maybe you're commuting, maybe you're at the gym, maybe you're taking a well-deserved break that we spoke all about on this episode. The Deep Wealth Podcast, it's your reliable source for the next big idea that could literally revolutionize your business. So once again, please hit that subscribe button, stay connected, inspired, and ahead of the curve. And again, your next big breakthrough moment, it might just be one episode away. Maybe it was even this episode. So all that said, thank you so much for listening. And remember, your wealth isn't just about the money in the bank. It's about the depth of your journey and the impact that you're creating. So let's continue this journey together. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for listening to this episode. And as we love to say here at Deep Wealth, may you continue to thrive and prosper while you remain healthy and safe. Thank you so much. God bless.